Welcome to Digital Body Language, or DBL. See, I gotta move your little video so I can read this. Humans rely, I'm sorry, my bad. Humans rely on body language to connect and build trust. But with most of our communication happening from behind a screen, traditional body language signals are no longer visible, or are they? And that is a quote from Erica Dewan in her book, Digital Body Language, from which I created basically the foundations for this training. So first, I want to talk about our training objectives. Under knowledge, I want us to be able to define DBL, but I want us to be able to define it based on our own individual needs. Under comprehension, my hope is that we can describe DBL in real life examples. Under application, that we're able to demonstrate DBL. And then I confess I rolled the last three into one. So under analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, that we can adjust, design, and rate our own DBL moving forward. So what is digital body language, or DBL? Well, DBL is basically body language as it's transformed by our virtual world. So that can mean how effectively and clearly we communicate by email, text, chat, and also over Zoom. It could take the form of punctuation or emojis, how long we take to respond to our emails or text messages, and then how we choose to present ourselves on Zoom. And then DBL in virtual communication differs from body language in face-to-face communication, obviously, right? But it is still very powerful, and I will explain why. But first, we're going to do a little chat exercise. So I think I have to stop sharing for a second, or maybe I just, hold on, let me get out of that. Nope, I got to stop sharing. Okay, that's all right. We're going to do a little exercise real quick. So if you all could open your chat. You know what? Where is my chat? I might need your help here, ladies.
It'll be right next to the share screen button.
Yeah, I don't see it. What am I missing?
You might have a funny setting. I think there are settings where
I see it now. I think it's because my screen was so small. Thank you, Jolene. Okay, awesome. So for our exercise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a question into the chat window. Okay, and then I'm actually going to tell you how I each want you to respond. And then you'll kind of understand why, okay? So the question is this idea of DBL starting to make sense? Okay, and Madison, I want you to respond sure with a period. Anna, I want you to respond sure with a ... or the ellipsis. And Jolene, I want you to respond with sure and an exclamation point. Awesome. Okay, so does anybody want to tell me why these little minute differences in punctuation can make such a difference?
Well,
I have an idea. Go ahead, Madison.
Oh, no, okay. Well, it's kind of like when we were talking about emphasis last training session, when it's just a period, it's just sure. That's how I read it. And then an exclamation mark is sure, like very, enthusiastic about it. And then sure with the ... it's kind of like, do you get it or don't you? I can't tell.
Right. Jolene, what was your take on it?
Well, so I actually am a big video game nerd. And so I do a lot of communicating online, and you don't get to see people's faces. It's all via text. And so it's almost as if we as a culture have developed a digital language, and using punctuation usually indicates, especially a period, usually indicates you're frustrated or upset or just kind of like, yeah, sure. You're very abrupt. And exclamation points, obviously a good way to show you're excited, like, yeah, this is great. And then the ellipses, it always reads to me as either you're irritated with me or you're like, yeah, whatever. And so it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And I think it depends on the person too, because you could be talking to like someone from a different generation, and they might have a completely different take on that, or maybe from another state or another country. There's so many little minute differences. So that was our little exercise. I'm going to go back to, oops, you know what? Let's see here. Make my Zoom bigger first. There we go. All right. So this is a very short video clip of Erica Dewan, the author of that book, and she's being interviewed. And in the clip, she's talking a little bit about DBL, like her take on it.
So we've all gotten those messages such as, we need to talk, in all caps with 3 ellipses, maybe. And maybe we were much more anxiety provoked, but it was a simple meeting request, or someone sending an email saying, what does that mean, with 4 question marks? And we think those question marks are accusatory versus maybe excitement or interest. What I found is that there's not just one digital body language. There are different digital body languages, and we may use them differently even across genders, generations, and even cultures. And so assuming the best intent is so important. And also remembering that every time we read someone else's message or send a message, we are actually answering 2 other questions that guide our interpretations. The first is, who has more or less power? And the second is, how much do we trust each other?
Okay. So those last 2 things she said, I think are hugely significant to DBL. So who has more or less power, and how much do we trust each other? So basically in any conversation, whether it's an email or a text message, those are kind of like your guiding lights as far as your digital body language, because your conversation with someone in upper management, your conversation with someone after a job interview is going to be far different than the way you handle that digital body language with a peer or a friend, right? And there's also the concept of trust. So, our group, we're all communication aficionados, we're all very aware of the importance of communication, but do we know each other very well yet? No, and that's okay. Obviously we have I think a high level of respect for each other, and that shows in our communication. But as you create that trust with other people, that I think changes the dynamic of your digital body language as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So I really liked that she tagged that specifically. Okay. So why is DBL so important? Well, we talked about, it builds trust. Has anyone ever heard of Dr. Mehrabian or the 7-38-55 rule? Anybody? Okay. I thought it was actually pretty interesting. So in the 1960s, Dr. Mehrabian did these 2 studies with college students. And from those 2 studies, he determined that only 7% of our communication are actual words, 38% is our tone of voice, and 55% is our body language, our hand gestures, our nonverbals, our facial expressions, all that. The problem is that since then, it's been heavily contested, because you think logically, how can so much of our communication be nonverbal if we communicate so much by writing, and even in a conversation, is that really true? Well, if you go back and you read his studies, what he was really talking about was specific situations where your tone of voice and your body language are sending a different message than your words. So for example, say you're meeting a friend for lunch and you walk in the restaurant and you sit down and your friend's brow furrowed, stress. You could just see the stress coming off of them. And you ask them, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And they're like, it's fine. Everything's fine. Obviously it is not fine. So in those situations, your brain as a human being is going to say, okay, I am now weighing that the body language and the tone of voice much more heavily than the actual words. And the reason that this is significant for digital body language is because the same thing can happen. So DBL can either dispel or create ambiguity, unfortunately. So I have a really good example. You know how Beach talks about like self-reflection and Kirkpatrick are like all about the evaluation? Well, I had one of those moments recently where I had to do some self-reflection. And it was right after I watched the recording of Jolene's training, because like 95% of the time, this is all you guys saw, was the top of my head. And I was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, not having any idea that my body language was conveying a lack of interest, when in reality, my head was down because I was just furiously writing notes, trying to get like everything Jolene's had to say, down on my notepad. But in hindsight, what I could have done is just waited and watched the recording and then taken my notes. So in those situations, your body language is so important, right? It's more important than you think you're sending a message, and that's where you could get that ambiguity. Okay, so how can we use DBL? Well, we can know our audience. Erica Dewan had talked about there are digital body languages based on gender, culture, generation, right? I have another very brief story. So I was in a class last quarter, track A, and the professor was super cool. He'd host these 30-minute Q&A sessions at night. And I had just started reading her book. And there was a chapter in there about how there are certain hand gestures that mean different things around the world. Do you know where I'm going with this? Well, on Zoom, everybody's doing the thumbs up, right? My professor, he's this guy from the South. He's like, double thumbs up, thumbs up and all over the place. Well, there's a chapter that talks about the thumbs up. And can anyone guess what the thumbs up means in some other countries, or like some Middle Eastern countries where it means something totally different than it means in the United States? Well, okay, it means to sit on it. Yes. And so the next time we had a meeting, I knew there was two ladies in there, and one was from Jordan and one was from Iran. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what is going through their minds? Like, are they like insulted? Are they just like, amused? They're like, those crazy Americans? Like, I don't know. Anyway, the whole point is just, if you can, know your audience, right? Madison's got puppies. Sorry. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay. And then use DBL to communicate clearly, which I think we all do. I think we're very good, except for me with the top of my head. And then the last thing, I really like that she says this. Erica Dewan says, always assume good intent. I don't know about you ladies, but I have received a text message before and I automatically think somebody's upset, or I'm assuming bad intent, right? Based on what? Punctuation, timing? I don't know, like when you don't get a message right away. So maybe in those situations, what I could do is pick up the phone and call that person. Kind of old school, but sometimes it's what you got to do, right? All right. So before we move on, that's kind of a lot. Does anybody have any questions? All right. We'll keep going. Okay. Does anybody want to share a personal example of DBL? And it can be positive or it can be negative. Your choice. Anybody got a good one? Maybe during a recent Zoom meeting or.
So when I worked as a marketing director in Oregon, there was a person in the company that did not care for me. And every single email she sent me, she would send with a smiley face. And I knew, because she didn't really care for me, that the smiley face indicated sarcasm. And so every single time now that somebody sends me an email and it has a smiley face. I'm like, so it's, personal experience shapes how you interact with things. And so for now, for me, forever, a smiley face, the equal sign in a parentheses reads sarcastic.
I like that. I know. Isn't that crazy? And now it's like scarred you for life. That's sad. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Jolene. Okay, so this next video clip is a guy called Mark Bowden. He's a he's just a body language expert. But I like his take on Zoom and body language. So let me play this for you and you tell me what you think.
I'm making sure that you've got a good view of me in close up. I am trying to now and again show you my hands. So you're seeing more of those, again, more sufficient data. I have set up my environment so it has some clues and some indicators about me and what I value. And at the same time, I'm seeing your environment back there. And I've got some questions about that because I can't quite see, but if I were to interview you or interrogate you about those, it would help me understand some values, because the objects that you're around or the objects that you allow yourself to be around can often say something about what's important to you or of interest to you or the mind that you occupy.
I really like that. I like his take on it, because how often do we consider digital body language just right or wrong, right? Or is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate? But what he's talking about is, like, I do think of the example of a Zoom job interview. I don't know if you ladies have had one of those yet. I'm probably going to have one in the future, though, realistically. I think it's a cool idea that, like, I don't know if you could see the guy that he was talking to, but his big smile is like so infectious. And then he's got this curio cabinet behind him, and it's just full of like Star Wars memorabilia and like little Harry Potter figurines. And I don't know, I like how he's just like, yep, this is me. Because on Zoom, we know each other from these tiny little rectangles that we live in, right? We never get to see each other's homes. We never get to like pat each other on the back or shake a hand or compliment each other on our cute shoes, but DBL is kind of like trying to peek over that wall that technology puts up. So I like that take on it. All right. So let's review our training objectives. And then you can tell me as learners, if you feel like, these have been achieved. So define DBL based on our own needs, describe DBL in real life examples, demonstrate DBL, which I think we already do pretty well, and then adjust, design, and assess your DBL styles moving forward. So do you feel comfortable, that you have a grasp on the idea of DBL? It's so broad. I highly recommend reading the book if you have time, because it's incredibly broad. I think it could actually be more than one topic, to be honest, but I do think that the author does a really good job of summarizing it, and it's very practical knowledge. All right, so you can ask me questions about the training, and then we'll go over the questions for a writing assignment. Anybody? And I'm going to stop sharing because I'd rather just see all your faces. Here we go. I'm going to pull open my Word doc. Let's see. Okay, so what did the training entail? Well, we learned about digital body language, how to define it in specific situations, how to use it effectively. There's this power and trust matrix that Dewan talks about, and that's kind of how you determine where is this person at in terms of the power dynamic I have with them, and where is this person in terms of the trust dynamic. How to use DBL to communicate clearly, dispel ambiguity rather than create it. I talked about the 7-38-55 rule in Dr. Merabian and how we can use DBL to build trust. And then we talked briefly about DBL on Zoom. I obviously use the training objectives philosophy, which is Bloom's taxonomy and the hierarchy of learning outcomes in the book. So that's, if you want to write it down, it's page 49 in our book, and it's Bloom's cognitive domain. And then I also used the concept of visuals. So Beach talks about in her book, Ruth Clark, evidence-based training methods. That's page 52. And we can use visuals to hopefully enhance understanding. So I did the PowerPoint, I had the video clips, and then learning styles. So I know Beach talks about there's no proven learning style that's going to work one way or work better than another. And I don't know what your preferred learning styles are. So I kind of just tried to throw as much out there as I could. Like we did the chat exercise to do something with our hands and the video clips, and then talking about the personal stories.
I think there is like a part in, I think Beach's book where she talks about, because you can't cater to every learning style, it's better to just touch on like everything, just in case. So I don't remember where she talks about that, but I think that's probably like a very good way to do it. And even if you don't learn that way, it's also good to see it in a different way, because then you learn how other people learn too. So I did have a question.
Sure.
The survey that you sent out before we did the training, kind of what did you want to derive from that? Just like our prior knowledge, or?
I'm glad you brought that up. I just wanted to get you thinking about it. So I think one of your responses said that you had heard of DBL before. So I just wanted to get you thinking about it. Even if you got curious and Googled it, that's fine. Because, you know, Beach is always talking about chunking pieces of information. So, you know, send out some sort of like pre-work, even if it's just a silly little 3-question quiz, and then you keep adding on to that. So that was really the reason why I sent that out, just to kind of get you thinking about it. Like anything else. And then of course, you know, the art and science, I tried to incorporate my own perspective based on my personal stories. And, you know, even just making the PowerPoint was fun. I used Canva, Jolene. It was very easy and I loved it. I just kept having fun moving stuff around. So let's see. How did or did not the trainer implement the training objectives as sensory? So my training objectives, and you know, they talk a lot about this in Bloom's taxonomy, how your verb should be not a reading verb, but like an action verb. So I said define DBL. So like if I actually had to say, okay, put it in the chat, would you be able to define it? I think everybody would be able to define it, describe, demonstrate. So all my verbs were those action-oriented verbs. But with such a short time frame, it was a little challenging. Like I had fun, but I didn't want to throw too much at you to where you're just like all over the place, you know? So
that's a good overview. It was like a broad overview of the concept of DBL, which is good. And I'm interested now to dig deeper into a couple of aspects. Like when you brought up the power dynamics, I would be fascinated to understand and to kind of dig into what should you do when you're communicating with someone who is either above or below your position, and what are things that you can do to cater to power dynamics. You also spoke about like punctuation, ellipses, things like that. What are things that you can do to consider how your own digital body language is coming across and being thoughtful of others? So you just created a nice big broad paintbrush stroke of the concept. And now I'm really interested in digging in a little deeper in some places, which wouldn't have been possible in 15 minutes. Like, you did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's kind of really all I could do, is try to give you a broad overview, but you did bring up an important point, which I think, Jolene, you talked about in your training, which is mirroring. And Erica Dwan talks about that in her book is, especially if someone is in a higher position of power than you, we can just mirror. And I'm sure a lot of you already do that intuitively or just based on your experience. Like, okay, they don't use exclamation points. I'm not going to, use exclamation points kind of thing. And then just kind of tread carefully. Okay.
So, just as an aside, if anyone uses Slack in their professional careers, Slack is amazing because you have not only the normal like emojis, which kind of help emote how you're feeling in that moment, but they have extra emojis that are very specific to specific emotions and feelings. So if you want to celebrate something, there's like a dancing cat, right? And it's just so silly, but it helps like tell the room that you're in a good mood and you're excited without having to rely just on punctuation. Emojis are pretty cool that way.
I like that. I've only used Slack a little bit. I've used it at the co-working place I was going to for a while. And Anna, I'm sorry. I just now saw your chat. I didn't realize that punctuation marks are part of the body language. Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So Jolene, Anna was telling us that she has a really bad sore throat. So she's chatting, which works really well for today's training.
Yeah, I use Slack like every day at work. I communicate with the customer service team through Slack because in the shipping, we have to like figure out address problems and like we're constantly communicating on there. So it's really funny to see how each different person like uses punctuation or uses emojis. And especially because we're always like, when you have time or, don't worry about it. Like, there's just different ways that we like tell each other that we need something done, but we're just trying to be so nice about it. So this training was super interesting. And like, I can like apply it to so many aspects of my daily work life.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, you could just keep digging deeper and deeper. There's a chapter in Dwan's book that is dedicated just to gender differences. And it's really interesting. Let's see, it was interesting to learn about DBL. I thought it was all about the body and now know there's so much more to it, right? It's crazy. And it's like we're constantly trying to keep up with the newest technology. So who even knows how it will evolve? Whatever comes down the pipe next, we're going to be trying to respond to that. Thank you for referencing the book. Yeah. See, it says we're running out of time. I was going to ask you ladies, Jolene, when you used your training, did you use your ASU Zoom account? No. Okay. Yeah. Cause 40 minutes is not a lot, but okay.
I know, just
Zoom training. I just have a
because
free account.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You
I
have
just
to
use it.
Okay.
And it's like a 40-minute time limit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The professor, I think in like the syllabus or something says we're supposed to spend like an hour to 2 hours meeting. And so it's kind of interesting that there's a time limit.
Right. Okay, Anna. Thank you, Anna. I have Zoom we can use if we need longer. Oh, thank you so much. Well, let's see. So of the questions we have left, do you want me to answer these or do you feel like these are ones maybe you can answer on your own for your paper? You can ask me anything. You have the paid version? Awesome. Okay. Well, then maybe going forward, like if I don't know if we think we're going to need more than 40 minutes. We have about 9 minutes left. So
I would wonder, are there any questions you need answered? Because I think the last question, if it's the same as last time, is what could have been done differently.
Yes, thank you, Jolene. Yeah, can you guys give me some feedback, like any advice moving forward? Like if I was going to give this presentation again?
Just from a graphic design point of view, it was really fun slideshow. The only thing that I would change is less words on the screen so you're not just reading the bullet points. Like try to cut it down to just points, like one word from the sentence or just like a highlighted word from the sentence, so that, because when you speak to us, it's so engaging. You're so engaging. But when you're just reading off the screen, you lose a little bit of that engagement. That's all.
Okay. No, that is really great advice. Thank you. And I am a little rusty at doing PowerPoint, so that's good to know moving forward. And Maddie?
Yeah, well, like, I mean, I think this was the perfect training because we're doing it on Zoom, right? So it's kind of interesting if you're to do it in person. I feel like you could add a lot more sensory things to it, like having people chat with each other and then using that as an example of like how, and also when you're if you're doing this with a bunch of different people, like everybody, I think the generational differences definitely make a big difference, because it's like so funny we're talking about this. I was just texting my like 13-year-old cousin, and her language over text is very different from my language, and I felt myself trying to adapt to how she was talking, to like, because I didn't want to like make her feel nervous or like weird, but then when she's talking to me, I feel like she's not saying anything, you know? So I think it's very interesting.
Plus she's 13, so maybe she wouldn't communicate more face to face anyway, you know?
Yeah, true.
My dad signs all of his text messages, Dad. Every single one. I love it. My sister and I are always like teasing him about it. Okay. Thank you, Anna. She says, I would start with why right after what is DBL. Okay. So maybe move the order of my slides around. I thought about that because like I read that quote and it kind of takes a while to get into to actually do it, why we need it. So you think even before like the learning objectives? Yeah. Okay. This is awesome. This is such good feedback. You know, I feel like kind of nerdy sometimes because I always bring up Toastmasters, but the whole thing is it does not necessarily mean I'm like the best speaker. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot that I still have to learn, and whatever I have learned from Toastmasters did not necessarily help me with this process because it is a lot more involved. Let's see. So we engage and see what's in it for us. That is a really good point. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much.
I think you should be nicer to yourself. You did a great job.
Yeah.
You did a really good job presenting. You're very personable. Like it's easy to connect with you because you're just like, and you're just being yourself. So be nicer to yourself. You did great.
Well, thank you so much. Well, you set the bar high, Jolene. So stories were awesome. Thank you.
Okay, and just jumping in real quick before we have to get off. I know present next week. My training is going to be a little different. It's going to be on, since it can be on anything, it's going to be on something that I have to do at work a lot, which is good manufacturing practices. I'm going to try to make it interesting, but I'll probably send out like a survey like Sarah did, just to get like see if anybody knows anything about it. I think my training has to do assessment and evaluation. So I want to do like a pre-assessment kind of thing. But just so you guys kind of know it's coming. It's not an interesting topic, but I'm going to try to make it interesting.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to learn about it. And Maddie, what time is your interview? Is it today?
Yes, it's at 5 p.m. So get home from work and have to get freshened up and get ready for it. So
you're going to be awesome. I'll be sending you good vibes at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Very cool. Well, does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Nope. All right. You ladies are awesome. Have a great day. Thank you so much for being so kind.